Well, greetings, everybody, and welcome to Fence and Forest. We're in another remote location this evening. We are out of the house, out of Knoxville. We're in Cleveland, and we have a returning guest. This is only the second time that we've ever had a guest on the show, twice, and he's a long ways from where he was when we were with him the last time. The one and only Mr. Grant Robinson. Grant, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
We are in Cleveland. The last time I was with Grant, we were in somewhere between Anchorage and Wasilla, Alaska, and making our way to Talkeetna for this Susitna River rafting trip. And so if you have been on the channel long enough to remember that trip, which was not long ago, just this past summer, or if you want to go back and check it out, you will see Grant. He was there. We did our road trip podcast then. He hasn't been back to Knoxville or Tennessee in, is that 2 years? 2.5 years? And he's back, and we're fishing, and we're grateful for it. And so while we're on the fact of being grateful for it, here's your verse of the day. Your verse of the day is Colossians chapter 3, verse 17. And whatever you do, in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. And that's a fitting verse because we're at Chickamauga. We were at Chickamauga today. We're in this beautiful hotel room. We're not sleeping in the truck. We're not camping. We're not cold. And it's a weekend. We're fishing, and we're glad we're doing it. So Grant's on the show for a few reasons. One, we went fishing today. He came to practice at Chickamauga with me, and it went terribly, really bad. Worst day I've had on Chickamauga in a month. So we're going to go to Parksville tomorrow instead and try to catch spotted bass. But I also wanted Grant on to talk about how Alaska's changed since July the 4th, because it clearly looks a lot different, and the things that you do and the actual daylight, everything, I'm sure. So I wanted Grant to share what goes on in Alaska in the wintertime.
Well, I mean, it's such a huge topic. It's
broad.
It's difficult to articulate the amount of change that you experience in Alaska, even in such short times, not just from July to January, but that is quite the extreme. Because obviously right now, in the part of the state where I live, in South Central Alaska, everything is frozen. And so actually, the way that I see it, living in Anchorage and living on the road system, there are more things to do in the winter than there are in the summer, almost.
Because I was shocked when you told me that.
Yeah.
So this summer, he's like, yeah, there's more things to do in the winter than the summer. I was like, really?
Like if you don't have a boat, you're not going to be able to get out and fish all these lakes anywhere you want to. Once that lake freezes over, if you have an ATV, a snow machine, a fat tire bike, or you just want to ski or pull a sled, you can get anywhere on that lake if you have the determination.
That's true.
To get there and pull an auger. And so it really opens up a lot of opportunities in that sense. And then also just even in the city of Anchorage, it's a lot prettier when it's winter time. The snow falls and it covers over all the trash. and so it makes having to be in a city of sorts a lot more pleasant.
And you get more moose in the city in the wintertime, right?
Yeah, they come in and eat all the landscaping and all the trees. So there's lots of chicken wire around from 4 to 7 or 8 feet on the trees. It looks kind of funny.
That's cool.
But people put that up so that when it comes spring, they have leaves and things to bloom.
Yeah, because a lot of the people that I've met in Alaska that I've kept up or just seen their stuff on Instagram, I've seen a lot more moose pictures, moose sightings in the last couple of months, which apparently is normal. So that's cool. That's fun to see. So what's the last big, not adventure, but what's the last either fish you caught or animal you hunted in Alaska?
It definitely slows down in the winter for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a crazy hardcore ice fisherman. There are a lot of folks who I'm friends with who are, and they love even more for those same reasons I just said. And you can catch some incredible fish through the ice, and it is a lot of fun. I just frankly don't have all the gear for it because it is a whole nother batch of toys that you need to get up and be going at a real good level. Yeah, so if I think back to the last fish that I caught, we might be going all the way back to October.
Really?
That was the most memorable fish that I caught. I've probably fished since then, but 3 fish in a row. Each one was a rainbow trout. That was the biggest I'd ever caught.
Really?
First one, biggest rainbow trout I ever caught. Second one, bigger than that one. And then third one was the biggest rainbow trout that I have seen with my eyes, not on the Kenai River.
Yeah.
And it was just incredibly beautiful. They call them leopard bows sometimes, because they're super spotted.
Yeah.
And just an incredibly pretty fish, and was
That's
a
cool.
super fun fight, and using techniques that I learned and used fishing in the Smokies that are not commonly deployed in Alaska.
That's cool.
And so it's definitely something different than what that those fish had been seeing all through the season.
So what river was that?
This was on. We were. It was on what we would call one of the Parks Highway streams.
Yeah.
So this is the Parks Highway is what goes from Anchorage to Fairbanks, and then there's a series of many medium to medium small size streams and rivers that flow through that are not glacier fed, and so they're at clear water, and just have road accessible streams.
That's cool.
So I honestly can't remember right now if it was like Willow Creek, Montana Creek. Those are kind of the big ones up there, and it was one of those, but I can't remember exactly which.
What'd you catch
right now?
What was the lure
I can remember which river it was. Now, for anyone doubting me, I do know exactly which river it was. I'm not dumb, but I was having to think for a second because we did fish both of those on the same day.
Yeah.
It was a nymph.
That means nothing to me at all.
Yeah. A lot of people throw
really small.
A lot of people throw streamers, which look like your small, they look like little fish.
Mm.
A nymph is imitating an insect that hasn't hatched.
Yeah. That's cool. So one of the things that surprised me when we were up there is that the way that they'll track the fish coming over the weirs and the dams, is that the right terminology?
Yeah.
So, because the fish are either there or they're not. Like, it's not like salmon, or we were fishing for sockeye salmon. And it's not like when they're running, you can just go anywhere on the river that they're running and catch them. Like, it seemed like there's a time when they're going to be running in this stretch of river. And if you're not there, you're either around the majority of the fish or you're not. So is that true?
So what you experienced on the Russian River was a non-optimum time on a very bad year. So the way that it will work in other years, like last year, which was a banner year for the Russian River, there's just literally hundreds of thousands of fish that are escaping through.
Yeah.
And so it takes, on the Russian River, it's like 7 to 10 days is what the Department of Fish and Game says it takes them to get from the mouth of the river where it meets the Kenai all the way up to the dam or the weir where they count the fish that are getting past all the fishermen. They call it like escapement because they escape all the fishermen, escape all the nets, escape all the bears for the most part, and have a chance to spawn and procreate. Last year, boatloads of fish. Takes about 7 to 10-ish days. So there's always going to be like waves of people. It's a lot like COVID cases in that like there's the most this day, but there's not it's not like if you miss it,
It's
you're in the clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does kind of come in waves. There are optimum times,
Yeah.
and you never know that when you're there, for the most part.
Yeah.
Like last year when the Russian opened, I was there opening day, and there were some guys who had been, old folks who were fishing, and they were just like, you really need to enjoy this because it's not like this most of the time.
Yeah.
And so I knew from the get-go, like, this was special. But you experienced the opposite end of that spectrum. And that's just how much it fluctuates, because these are wild fish.
Yeah.
There are, if you sockeye that are put, that are raised through the first phase of the life cycle in the hatchery,
Mm-hmm.
and then put back into one of the lakes on the Kenai River. But other than that, the Kenai River system, which is the main river that flows through it's the most popular river in South Central Alaska because it's on the road system. World record king salmon came from there, trophy rainbow trout. It's just accessible. So if you go fish in Alaska and you're not flying out somewhere, you're probably going to fish the Kenai. And it's nearly entirely wild. Most folks would say it's entirely wild fish, but there's a smidgen,
It's really
tiny
close.
smidgen, tiny
it's really
smidgen.
close.
Yeah.
You got to be accurate. Well, that's cool. That's just, and I thought I remember thinking when I was up there that we bass fishermen, as hateful as we are or can be, we could take a note from the salmon fishermen and the trout, all the fishermen in Alaska. Because when those fish are running, they're this close to each other, like all the time. You look down a bank and there's 30 guys in a 50-yard stretch, and they're just all, it's like a school of fish in the summertime. But they're not, I mean, I'm sure you get people that get aggravated if you get tangled up, but like they understand, like, hey, if we're all going to show up and fish in the same spot, we're all just going to show up and fish in the same spot. They say, I mean, just people up there seem to handle that better.
Well, it's totally different because when you're fishing for salmon,
yeah,
you're not fishing. It is technically sport fishing. It is managed
That's
sport
true. It's
fishing,
not a-
but it is, you are fishing for those fish to like fill your freezer.
right.
There are other ways where you can go and participate in what they call a personal use fishery. If you're an Alaska resident and stick a net that's this wide, like 4 or 5 feet wide.
I saw a couple. They were massive.
And just hang it down, like stick it in the river and wait for fish to swim in and fill your freezer that way. But for like a lot of people, that's not particularly appealing, and they would rather go out and fill their freezer through catching them on rod and reel. And so that's where the combat fishing comes in, which is what you experience there. And frankly, I saw it the other day in Maryville right after they stocked those trout.
That's true.
In Pistol Creek.
I forgot about that.
Because like it's the same type deal. When you're fishing for food, it's a little different than when you're fishing just for sport.
Yeah, that's true. That's my first thought, was because there was at one point where the sport fishing ended, and it had to be subsistence fishing beyond that on the Russian.
Correct.
And then right there at the line is where everybody was just piled in. I was like, I think I've even put in one of the videos. I was like, that reminds me of a river ledge on Pickwick at the beginning of June is what that looks like. But anyways, that was cool. Very cool. So what is the next year? Because he's in Knoxville, he's not staying in Tennessee. He's going back. Do you have a big list you're wanting to check off, or a list item you're wanting to check off this year in Alaska that you haven't done?
Not so much like one specific thing that I can particularly plan
Or a
this
place
year
you
entirely.
haven't
No, not even that. It's more that I want to spear some more fish.
been. Yeah.
That's one
That's
thing.
cool.
I don't know if we talked about this before, but one thing that's a pretty small community, but with free diving in South Central Alaska, there's a good little group of folks who like to go and swim in the ocean, and a few of us like to get our fish that way. So I would like to get a halibut this year. That's for sure.
That'd be
On
cool.
a spear.
Yeah.
The world record king salmon is on that's like my Alaska list because it's still achievable or attainable to do responsibly. Like there's not going to be a world record rod and reel caught king salmon. I don't think we're ever going to see it again.
What is it?
It's either 97.8 or 98.6. It's something right there. It was caught in the Kenai River.
Yeah.
But the fish of that size were just not. The fish are smaller, and it's not just in the Kenai; it's all across the North Pacific.
How long ago was that fish caught? Roughly.
70s.
Yeah.
There's like there's a few photos and it was a guy just from Soldotna.
Yeah, I love Soldotna.
But that's really what made that's the Kenai River's claim to fame.
Yeah.
Even though now, from my perspective, granted, I am biased in that I got into fly fishing or really into fishing this kind of more recently in life through fly fishing and trout fishing. The Kenai River's trout fishing is remarkable. You won't find fish that size in a river you can get to on a road anywhere that I know of.
Yeah.
Yeah, but with the spear fishing, the world record is only 23 or 24 pounds.
Oh, yeah.
So there are definitely thousands of world record size fish if you can spear them in the ocean.
Because he said earlier, it has to be salt water. You can't spear them in fresh water.
Yeah.
Because that would just be like shooting a fish in a barrel.
With king salmon, not so much, but in Alaska, the only fish that you can spear in freshwater is northern pike. The only sport fish that you can spear in freshwater is northern pike. And even that, there are certain places where it's managed to be a trophy fish where you can't spear them in certain times of the year.
Huh. Cool. That's awesome. Well, we wait to feature you on an episode with the world record king salmon holder speared in saltwater. Very cool.
Well, that's where all the spearing takes place.
Just spearing. Spearing. So there you go. And now he's down here catching 10-inch white bass and 12-inch largemouth on what is supposed to be the greatest bass fishing lake in the country. One of them. Definitely not the best. Because even on a 40-degree day in January, there were 200 boats out there today, which is fine. It really wasn't that bad. I've actually been surprised the last few weekends how few boats there's been on Chickamauga. But you get down some of those areas where there's always a ton of people, Harrison Bay and Chester Frost, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's still people everywhere. And there's not even a big tournament going out today. But anyways, so that's where we were today. It's where I've been the last 3 weekends, the third weekend in the row. And by far the toughest day that I've had. Caught them really good last weekend. And I'm going to show you what I caught them on here in just a minute. And really the trip before that, second weekend of January, was just kind of goofing off with some good friends of mine. One of them ended up in the water that was 41 degrees. Because, did I tell you about that? Or did you see that? Or
I don't think so.
Yeah. So I don't think I mentioned this in the other episode. If I did, I apologize, but I don't care. Elliot is backing the boat in, and the water on Chick is really, really low. I mean, like all of our lakes here get a winter drawdown, but this is lower than usual. At least from what I've been told, it may not be at all. But it looks, it's probably down at least 6 feet, 7 feet maybe. There's a couple times where the water line's above our head. Anyways, it doesn't matter. I really don't know how far down the water is compared to normal. But it's far down enough where when Elliot backed us in the lake, it dropped the trailer tires off the end of the boat ramp, and it was such a steep drop off. This was Sail Creek, so heads up if you're going to put in at Sail Creek anytime soon. And because the boat that put in right before us did the same thing, but they were able to rip theirs out. And it fell so far off that the tires weren't sitting on the ground. And so the metal fender is caught against the butt of the ramp. And I'd gotten out. He's like, I don't want to tear it up, so you try it. And so I put it in four-wheel drive, and I backed it further down the ramp and tried to ram it to pull it out. And it very obviously was not going to come without me really screwing up my trailer. So I'm just like, well, hang on, let me think about what we can do. And Elliott's already like, don't worry about it. I'm going in. And I look over and he's standing in his underwear, and then he's like up to his neck at the bottom of the boat ramp in the second weekend of January. He just jumped in the water. It's like, dude, you cannot get in the water. Yeah, I'm good. Which you love friends like that. That'll just run into the lake to get your trailer out of the water. But that was just we caught more fish that day than we did today. But I'm going to get into, so tomorrow we're going to Parksville because I love spotted bass, and I've only ever been to Parksville one time, and I really just want Grant to catch some fish while he's here because I caught fish with him. He needs to catch fish with me. But we're going to go to Parksville and try to whale on some spotted bass because I've heard they're catching them decent over there. I really only learned that from one person, but I don't care. And we didn't catch them great on Chickamauga. And the only other time I've been to Parksville, when we put the boat in the water, it was 9 degrees. And we were stubborn, and it said for weeks, we're going to Parksville on this day. It was also in January. And we caught them decent that day. It was fun. But I think we could really go out there and catch some big ones tomorrow, which is what we're going to try to do. We're at the lovely Fairfield by Marriott in Cleveland. I haven't stayed in a hotel this nice. I haven't stayed anywhere on a fishing trip this nice since I don't remember when. We were usually in the truck at a campsite or in the cheapest flea bag hotel you can find. We stayed in one in Pickwick once where the police knocked on our door and said, hey, I don't know how y'all found this place, but you're going to want to stay somewhere else next time. He said, I might leave tonight. We'd say that was actually funny. We were there fishing the Cabela's Championship in college. It was my senior year. Yeah, it was my senior year. I was fishing with Tyler Thompson. We were down there with 2 other guys, and there had only been 2 other residents staying in the hotel. One of them had just gotten out of prison a few months before, had been in for a long time. And the one on the other side, he had multiple visitors coming in and out all during the day. But him and his buddies would come over, hang out at the boats, talk to us all night long. We were up till 10, 11 o'clock at night. And then the second night, actually not the second night, police came by in the middle of the day, and they're like, hey, yeah, we don't know what y'all Googled to find this place, but we'd really recommend you stay somewhere else because this is not a good place to be. He said, your boat may not have tires on them in the morning. And we're like, oh, we've made friends with these people. We're good. We're okay. And we did. We stayed. It was fine. But to be somewhere that's this nice is phenomenal. I feel like a real adult. You get married, you start staying in nice hotel rooms. Maybe it's a correlation. I don't know. But the reason, well, other than the fact that Grant's here and we want to fish, is that first BFL of the year is next weekend on Chick. We're going out of Dayton. I have not practiced up around Dayton. I don't have as much confidence up there on that end of the river this time of year. I feel like I'm going to have to be down at least mid-lake, like from the bridge down, which is still a lot of water. But today we spent half the day at least. We spent probably 80% of the day lower than I'll end up going next weekend. I hadn't been down around Harrison Bay, Chester Frost, these last 2 weekends. And so I wanted to just give it a shot today and see if it was worth making the drive. And I just couldn't catch them. And I know that there's guys that are. I've had lots of buddies down here that are saying they're catching a ton of them on doing all sorts of things, whether it's main river bars, catching them in ditches, catching them on hunt, catching them on your normal pea gravel stuff, on main river channel points. And I've only been able to catch them consistently doing 2 things over the course of the last 2 weeks. And I'll show you what I'm catching them on. I'll wait until the morning of the tournament. There's a video, and I'm not just trying to say it's a good video, but we catch some dang healthy ones. Like 5.5, 6 pounders in a video, but I'm going to wait until the morning of the tournament just in case the 10 people that watch this happen to be fishing the BFL. And not that anybody would go fishing anyways. I'm normally don't care. I hate the secret stuff because it really doesn't matter. But also, if there's one boat sitting on the spot that I'm wanting to start at, I might be screwed because it might be the only place that I know how to catch a bass on Chickamauga. Because I can't catch it. And what's confusing, not confusing, it's just me not knowing the place well enough is, like I had pretty good weight last weekend. And there's been a couple of times where my 5 fish would weigh decent. But I'm only catching 6 or 7 keepers a day. And I know I've got a handful of people that are like, oh, we caught a ton of 2, 3.5 pounders, but we can't catch any big ones. And I was like, well, I'd love to know how to go do that so that if I only get 2 bites in there, 5 pounders, that it would balance out. But here's what has worked. And it's not exciting. It's kind of a bummer. I've left the Alabama rig in the boat because I don't want to have to retie it in the morning. But most of the fish that I've caught the last 2 weekends have been on an Alabama rig, which is not surprising and it's boring. But I've gotten these new heads that I like. Big fan of these. I'm obviously not sponsored by Demiki, but Demiki makes this panda head. Pandla. Oh, I've been calling it panda the whole time. It's not panda. It's Pandla. I just saw it and assumed it was panda. Demiki Craft Panla jig head. I don't know why you call it Panla, not panda. Anyways, 1/8 ounce head. I've got 3 of those, and then just 2 dummies on a screw lock. I've been throwing the Rage Swimmers because they're a little bit cheaper than the Kitex, and unless I'm fishing them as a single swim bait, I don't really care. And so one thing, I'm going to say this too, is one of the goals that I said I was going to have this year is that instead of just making videos, fishing videos and podcast episodes that are just like, oh, here's a fish catch, here's me shooting a deer, here's whatever. But I want to get more into just what I'm catching them on, so that if you see a video and it's at Douglas or it's at Chick, or just the fact that it's on a river system lake or a clear highland reservoir, that if you're doing that kind of thing relatively soon, maybe some of this will be more useful as opposed to just something that you might find entertaining to watch. So that's why I'm going to try to get a little bit more in depth with baits and techniques. And after the tournament, yeah, sure, I'll send you the waypoints. I don't care. So anyways, swim baits, Rage Swimmers. These are it doesn't really matter the color, I don't think, as long as it looks like a shad. Pro Blue Red. 3 of those. And what happened to me the first day, last weekend, I don't ever get to fish 2 days in a row, and I'm getting to do it 2 weekends in a row. Shout out to my wife, Dana, for being just as cool in this first month of marriage as you were our last 2 years of dating. It hadn't changed yet, all you haters that said it would. Anyways, is that I was getting so many fish hitting the dummies. And once I garlic dipped the tail, the dip and glow chartreuse, day 1 with no dip and glow, I missed 5 or 6 fish that I assume were hitting the dummies, or they could have just been swimming into the rig, but I think they were hitting the dummies. I know at least half of them were, and only caught 2 or 3 on the rig. And then I dip them, and I stuck a different swim bait in the middle. I had a pack of those Megabass. I don't know why I'm holding this up. I'm talking about the different swim bait. Megabass Spark Shads. I stuck that in the middle, dip and glowed it. And then I had 1 fish that I didn't put in the boat, and about 7 or 8 that I did. So that seemed to help a ton. And most of those fish, I got to do a whole breakdown on how this has been helping me. But the Garmin Panoptix, the Live Scope, the learning curve, I thought it might be huge. It's been about that big since I've gotten it put on, which is awesome. But last weekend, both days, I caught at least half of my fish watching them bite it on the Live Scope. And what I love is that I'll be going down a bank that I'm planning to fish, and then as I'm fishing, I may make a cast and I'm reeling it in, but while I'm reeling it, I can be turning my foot and I'm looking all around the boat to see if there's brush pile or whatever. And at least 4 or 5 times I've been reeling, and I'll turn and look and mark a brush pile and throw at it and catch a fish. And this is just like, it really is as helpful as everybody said it was going to be. And the one other thing that I'm doing, and it's the same setup, except I've got a 1/4 ounce head. 1/4 ounce, that sounded weird when I said it. A 1/4 ounce head instead of an 1/8. And then I'm throwing, it's still a Rage Swimmer. Today I threw a Speed Shad on it, the Bass Pro brand. But it's the 2 3/4. It's like the 2.8 Kitex size, in just a solid white swim bait with the chartreuse tail. And that's been really nice, just being able to flip that at something. I've caught quite a few spots, which is fun because I love spots. They're my favorite, which is why I'm so excited to go to Parksville tomorrow. But as far as anything else, I've been cranking a lot. I've caught just a few cranking, but not a ton. I've caught 1 fish on a trap the last 3 weekends, and I've thrown it probably more than I have cranked. Flipped a jig some. I really want to catch them on a jig. Can't catch them on a jig. So my plan for Saturday is I've got to throw the only thing that I've been able to catch them on, which is a single swim bait. I've also caught them on a 5-inch swim bait. I've caught a few fish, and the ones that I have were good ones. that I caught on a 5-inch swim bait. So I got 3 different swim baits, 3 different weights that I'm going to be throwing. And I'm going to have to hope that I catch them on those 3 swim baits. Now, it would be really easy for things to go really well next weekend where I pull into my first 2 spots and catch a limit. And if I can, ideal scenario, I have at least 14 pounds in the first 2 hours, and I put every other rod up except for a 6-inch swim bait, an Alabama rig, and a big jig, and I go flip bluff walls and a couple other little places and just look for big fish, which I would love to do, because the bluff thing, that's one thing that I have not done as much as I should have, but I've kind of not done it because I've got a ton of confidence fishing bluffs this time of year. It's something I just enjoy doing, and I know that if I get one to bite out there, it's probably going to be a better fish. So that's something I'm just kind of saving, like, hey, if you got to go and just fish all your bluff spots, go fish or just drive around and look for bluffs, transitions, then I'll go do that and be fine with it. But it would also be really easy for me to roll through those first 2 spots and catch 1 10-incher and then spend the rest of the day scrambling, which I like. I don't mind to scramble. Big junk fishing fan, but it'd make it a little bit stressful. That's not my favorite thing in the world. But anyways, fishing-wise, that's all I got. Be sure to check the channel when that practice video goes up, because it's going to be a lot of fun. And hopefully we're going to have about 30 spotted bass, best 5 weigh-in. I'm going to say a humble 22, because I think we're going to catch a big one tomorrow. Hopefully we'll have a cool spotted bass video coming too. Anyways, fishing-wise, that's it. And I'll show you the rig, because my Alabama rig is a little bit different than some of them. It's got one little thing that's different. And I'll show you that in the video. I hashed it all out today. Only other thing I'm going to say is this, then I'll let y'all go. We've got hats. We also have shirts. I don't have a shirt, or I'll show it to you. It's not the hoodie, but there is, and it's going to be in the link to this. It's going to be in the link to the podcast. It's going to be in the link to the YouTube channel. But we've got a Shopify store that's open. We're pre-ordering patch hats, leather patch hats. It's going to look just like this. It's going to be gray with a light leather patch. It's going to have it laser engraved in. This is actually a fake leather patch. Our hats are going to have a more realistic leather patch than this, but that still looks pretty slick anyways. And shirts, long sleeve, nice Bella canvas shirts, dark heather gray. We're going to have a little logo in the chest and then this big logo on the back. Pre-ordering, it is done on February 7th, and then the shirts are going to get made and they're going to get shipped out, and it's going to be great. The whole point, you're just helping the podcast. Well, you're really not helping the podcast. The podcast has been going for a year. We're fine. What you're helping is the tournaments, the gas money. I spent $120. We all know how expensive gas is in a day. And so it helps entry fees. It helps tournaments. And really, I just think it would be cool to make shirts and hats. So I've made some. And if you buy them, you're supporting us, and I appreciate it. So we are going to go to bed because we're excited we have a nice place to sleep. We're excited we have free breakfast in the morning. And we're excited that we could probably sleep until 6:30 or 7, still eat breakfast, and make it to the ramp by daylight, because we've got a 25-minute drive instead of 2.5 hours. And that's wonderful. So, Grant, thank you. Oh, we can do that. We can do that.
I wasn't sure what you were going for.
We have a history of bad high fives that goes back to a church skit in which we were both in a gorilla costume. We weren't in the same gorilla costume. We were in 2 different gorilla costumes, and we were supposed to high five, and we neither one could see. And his sister got a great picture of us about right here. And I think it's still hanging up in the church somewhere, probably. Anyways, thank you for watching. Check out the Shopify link. Check out the channel. Subscribe. We've started to grow, and it's super exciting. So thank you. Thank you to everybody that's watching it on YouTube. It's really surprised me how many people are getting their podcasts on YouTube, and you're choosing to listen to us. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoy it. If you do, subscribe us up, and we'll see you here short. See, dang it. I get to the last couple words. I do it every time. I need a little way to wrap everything up. I'm just going to do it this way. Some people like to high five the camera. I should just start headbutting it. They're just like, I'll just word, goodbye. Can't even hit the end button.